there's so much talk about like social media is kind of driving us all insane, which I tend to generally
I,
agree with.
yeah, same.
But
No disagreement there.
but I do also think that it's forcing us to really value what is authentic in this kind of converse way. The democratization has led to this desire for authenticity, which I think is really interesting. And I think that part of it is good.
I agree. Those are areas where I see light in the midst of some confusion of a world. And
Oh, maybe that's our pull quote right there. We did it, Justin. Light in
maybe,
the midst of confusion. I love it.
A garden of pure ideology.
Yeah, just your typical Super Bowl car ad.
Or a hilarious beer ad.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
I think you're the best ever.
I think we're gonna be here a while.
hello, filmmakers and advertising listeners. Welcome back to another episode. Yep, 'tis me, Justin Rossbacher again. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a peek behind the scenes at our production house, Cry. We've been supporting Cody Wilson on his feature film Lesions, and we've completed post-production, and it's now on the festival circuit. I've been able to join Cody Wilson at the last two festivals. It received great buzz and call-outs at Panic Film Fest, and last month at Nevermore, Lesions received Best Feature, Best Directing, and the two leads, Alexander McPherson and Elsa Ames, each received an award for Best Performance. The first time in the 27 years of the film festival's existence that any one film has won all four of those big awards. Now back to today's Filmmakers and Advertising episode. I sit down with Ben Steinbauer, Emmy Award-winning film, television, and commercial director. He was named one of Texas' best directors by Texas Monthly and is co-owner of the award-winning production company, The Bear. His directorial resume includes a feature documentary, Winnebago Man, which I was delighted by, the documentary Chop and Steal, and the Hulu original workplace comedy doc-series High Hopes, with Jimmy Kimmel as EP. His commercial directing credits include projects for Capital One, Yeti, Whataburger, Crate and Barrel, Whole Foods, Indeed, and many more. Needless to say, Ben has been up to some cool stuff for the past couple decades. Not only that, but he also has his own podcast, Doc Walks, which I definitely recommend checking out. The format's pretty cool, and we'll drop a link in the show notes. I really enjoyed my conversation with Ben. We covered a lot of great things about doc filmmaking, but also about filmmaking in general, like the value of building a good team, maturing as a storyteller, and being in love with the thing that you're working on. Ben is full of great stories, insights, and practical advice for filmmakers at any stage in their career, and I think you'll enjoy. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Ben Steinbauer. Ben, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Justin, I'm thrilled that you asked me.
So I got to check out multiple different things that you've been involved with, including your podcast, like the very first one, I think, and then also one which may have been the one that you went to Sundance and like walked around Sundance. Was that the first one, or?
We've done two of those. No, the first one is called The Pilot or Two Dipshits Talk About Birds. Because basically the podcast you're referring to is called Doc Walks, and it's me and my co-host Keith Maitland. And we're basically both mid-career documentary directors, and we would meet every couple of weeks and go on walks and talk about our projects and the state of the industry. And at a certain point, one of us was like, should we just do a podcast? And the other one was like, no, that's a terrible idea. And then about 6 months went by, and then we were finally like, you know what? I think if we think of this as like what we wish would have been around when we were just starting out, then maybe
Yeah.
it won't feel quite so like self-aggrandizing or something. And so we sort of think of it as like we're celebrating this art form that we love of documentaries, and hopefully creating a community and then giving back to like, the next generation of doc filmmakers.
Yeah.
And so there is a concerted effort to try to push the form forward so that we're out on a walk, you're with us, hopefully it feels like you're walking. The adventure of it is part of it, like we're commenting on, like you said, birds or trees or the day or whoever we run into.
Yeah. But I like the ethos behind your podcast. It's similar when we started to think about doing a podcast, and it's just there's a certain part of me I was like, oh, I don't want to be one more voice in the midst of it. But then we realized there just wasn't a specific podcast that was centered around filmmakers, but trying to be in the advertising industry, and
Mhm.
that specific nexus that seemed to be like clouded a mystery. And like, well, we're going to be having these conversations anyway. Might as well just record it and then share it, because like you said, I would have liked to have this when I was starting out. So similarly,
100%. And
so
I listened to your episode with Adrian Bendy, because I'm here in Austin and Adrian's at GSD&M, and I found that exact same thing like very refreshing, because I think that, like, just from my personal experience, I didn't really understand that directing commercials was even a job possibility for me when I was starting out. And I kind of just stumbled into it. And I think you guys are doing a great thing by offering this as like a resource to up and coming directors. It's like this is a way that you can work and practice and hone your craft and make really cool things with your friends, um, and also continue to make your films too, if you so choose. So I love what you guys are up to.
oh, wonderful. Great to hear. Now, I also just watched Winnebago Man last night and was delighted by it.
Awesome.
When did you make that? At what point in your career? How did that come about?
Well, that is a wild story for me because basically I made that as my graduate thesis in grad school here at UT Austin.
Okay.
And prior to that, I had gone to the University of Kansas and I graduated in 2001. And there was about a 3-year gap between graduating from KU and starting grad school at UT. And within that time, I was basically working professionally as a director and an editor. So um, I started editing documentaries for my friend Bradley Beasley, who made The Fearless Freaks and Okie Noodling and Sweethearts of the Prison Rodeo. And I had made and was making short documentaries at that point. I made about 6, I think, before I started grad school. And I was always doing music videos, and I'm from a musical family and played in bands. And so it was kind of like filmmaking was like a very natural extension of all that for me. And but my grandfather is also or was also a professor. And so in my head, I was like, I want to be that cool old film professor at some point in my life. And so I should go
Yeah.
back and get my graduate degree. And so I went back to UT, and what you do there are the program is very small. There's only 10 people, and half of them are international. And so it's really like it's almost like a primer for how to be an indie filmmaker. Like you learn every aspect of, lighting, sound, uh, how to work the camera, editing. Like it's basically like a filmmaker's boot camp for 3 years, and you make shorts every year, and then you graduate with like kind of the longest short, which is your thesis. And I, at that point, was just tired of making shorts. I was like, I've made like 8 or 9 of these things at this point. Like, I got to make a feature for Christ's sake. And so this is funny to think back on and remember, but like this is around like 2007, and YouTube came about in 2006. And this
Yeah.
idea that you could become known for something that was out of your control that you weren't happy about was a brand
Hmm.
new thing. Like that had literally
Right.
not happened in human history before. And the sort of case in point for that was this clip called "The Star Wars Kid," which went viral, and
Hmm.
you may even still remember. It's
I do
featured pretty
remember.
heavily in
And
in Winnebago Man.
yeah.
Yeah, and basically this poor teenage boy in Montreal uh, was a Star Wars fan on the chubby side, checked a camera out from his AV high school department, recorded himself using a golf ball retriever like a lightsaber, forgot to take the tape out of the camera, returned it to his high school AZ club. Some some people found it, thought it was very funny, uploaded it to YouTube, and it just went crazy. Like Stephen Colbert was doing versions of it.
Yeah.
It got to George Lucas. He put it for fun in like an actual Star Wars scene. Like it was wild how this took off.
Yeah.
And this poor kid went from sort of being bullied at his school to like feeling like he was getting bullied around the world. And he
Yeah.
did not handle it well. And he ended up going to a mental institution. And I remember reading this and being like, oh man, that is so interesting that that even exists as a thing that we have to think about now in the world as part of being a human. And I loved this Winnebago Man clip, and I had, gotten it on a dubbed VHS tape and shown it to a million people, and it just brought me and my friends so much joy. And so when I thought that maybe the star of that had a similar experience of being embarrassed or feeling laughed at, I just sincerely wanted to find him and tell him, like, no, this is a really great thing. And this has brought me and my friends lots of happiness. And I think you could actually embrace this. And that's like the start of the movie. And then from there, it becomes this
Yeah.
wild ride of like me meeting him and how he
So you started
responds
that
to
2007? You started that journey?
no 2006, I would say, is when I probably towards the end of 2006. Yeah. And then the movie came out, it premiered at South by in 2009. So I graduated
Yeah.
from grad school in 2007 with like a longish version of it. I think it was like 30-40 minutes. And then I used that as a proof of concept to then find a producer who helped me finish the movie as a feature. And then from there, it was my first feature, and it was a hit on a level that I was not prepared for. We got a theatrical release in the United States and then Canada, and we were on the Tonight Show, and we played that movie around the world, and celebrities were all coming to the screenings, and Michael Moore was doing the Q&As. It was wild. And that set me off on this kind of like very stereotypical Hollywood experience, which I won't bore you with, but it was a bigger hit for me out of the gate than I realized it was going to be.
Yeah. No, well, I actually am curious on some of those things as far as what ended up transitioning. Maybe if you're not interested in going into details on it, I am interested, like, what's the Cliff Notes version, if you want to give that, as far as like what led to there to where you are now. And
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No,
because
I'll talk about it.
you
I just don't
started
want
you
to.
started the Bear Studio
Mhm.
in
At that
2007,
same
right? At
at
the
that
same
same
time.
time, yeah.
Yeah, which
So
is when
we,
we started our company too, was in just a few months later in 2007. So right out of
man,
college, just boom, kind of
can you
thing.
believe it? It's been almost 20 years,
I
Justin. It's
know. Old
crazy.
people say they've been in business for 20 years, and we
I
get to say it
know.
here very soon. Yeah.
I well, I wish it felt easier. I mean, I guess in some ways it does, but that's kind of my like big takeaway is, I used to always think like, oh, it'll get easier when I have a team and I have a company and it's never easy. It's always like some new version of a obstacle pops up. And I can only imagine. I don't know this for a fact, but I know a lot of people who are way more successful than me who do what we do. I mean, I think they would all agree that it's even at their level, it's like you never have the time or the money or the cast or the location, or you know what I mean? Like you're always kind of behind the eight ball in some way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm with you there. And even when the budgets get bigger, then the scope get bigger, and or the hand holding and or reviews get bigger, or whatever it might be. And so it's always feeling like you're having to squeeze something out of it in order to be able to get it to where it needs to be. Before we get into
Absolutely.
the origin story too much, as far as, I mean, origin story really is probably Winnebago Man, but
Mhm.
past that, what is the current kind of status of it? How much of it is like original content that you are producing specifically, like whether for TV, Hulu, and other things, and how much of it is on the commercial side? Yeah, what's kind of like the general makeup and identity of the Bear right now?
Well, the Bear as a production company, we've made. I, I need to have these numbers solid, but I think it's 7 features, a dozen shorts. I think it's probably more than that, but let's just say that. And then basically where we make our living is in doing commercials. So the way that we sort of have always thought about it is like we want to just be this ecosystem that creates work. So when we have a film premiere, for example, we invite our advertising clients and collaborators, and then that sort of works as a commercial for our production company, and then they want to hire us to do the next spots, which then help us to finance the next creative project. And so it's this kind of circle. And I don't know
That
that
is
we
really
ever like,
interesting.
well, I don't know that we ever like sat down and said like this is how we should do it, but I don't think that we know how to do it any other way. I mean,
Right.
my business partner Barron and I were in the same graduate class at UT. His father was a professional photographer in Dallas and had his own studio where his mom was the producer, his dad was the photographer. And so he grew up in this similar dynamic. And um, I just am a big believer in like do the thing that you want to see in the world, and then
Mhm.
the work will sort of follow that, you know. And so if I for example, was like too targeted about, you know, trying to advertise for our company or something, I think that it would feel a little sweaty and thirsty. And so my way of doing that is just like, I want to make interesting work that you guys then want to hire me because you saw it and were entertained. And I don't know if that's smart. It's not like I'm a rich man, but I am a busy man. And I've always kind of held that, I guess, as the goal to be making my own work and doing that consistently. So, you know, on that level, I guess I'm successful, but, my bank
It's
account may say otherwise. But
yeah, I think it's a beautiful sentiment, and in many ways, I don't really know any other way around it either. So yes, I support it,
yeah.
even if it hasn't made you a rich man yet. Yet.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well,
Yes.
there's always the hope, right? I mean,
Yeah.
well, how did you guys start out, Justin? Like you have a company that's the same age. Like, did you start thinking like we are going to make commercials and that's what we're on fire to do, and then you've done that, or what was your origin story?
It's very, so the ethos is very similar to yours, and it's a bit uncanny, but basically we didn't have a big breakout hit or anything that kind of got us known as far as Winnebago Man is concerned. But I had done some short films. My colleagues who were just classmates in school and had done some things, I really admired what they did and their talents. We were working on making another short film, and we just kept on planning and doing it. It was going to be great. It was going to be, the creme de la creme, kind of aspects. We never got around to doing that, but I was interning at an agency, and I was involved in their production department. And I just kind of looked around and I went, I can do this, especially if I
Yeah,
can bring these other two guys on. Like, I was a little insecure just on my own talents, but I saw the talents of my classmates, and I thought, hey, we're about to graduate. We could go get jobs places, or we could just start a company, do commercial work, which we're already doing,
yeah,
and spend the extra money on funding our projects. And
yes,
so
that's
that was
it.
the
That's
goal.
it.
and then, and then I've genuinely loved the commercial side. I like having clients. I like being able to provide a service. I like how quick a turnaround it normally is. It just
Yeah,
it just activates a different part of the creative mind, and the element that you're providing a true service to other people and helping people and involved in the process. And so I do like it. It's not like, oh, it's just a stepping stone to making movies and TV shows. It is genuinely something that I would love to do for the rest of my life, here and there. I do hope the majority of
yeah,
the time would be around TV and movies. Didn't used to be
yeah.
TV, but then there was a whole golden age of TV that changed, and now I'm like, now I like TV again. But we
Absolutely.
do documentary work, but personally, I kind of stepped more into producing side on that, and we have really talented directors, writer directors that work on the documentary stuff that I can support. And so I lean much more
And
towards the narrative style and the anthem kind of commercials, the movie trailer kind of epic kind of things. Also a little bit of niche
cool.
and comedy. We have our TV shows in
Mhm.
development. We have our feature films in development, and hopefully either we'll just be able to self-fund some of those, or we find the right partners to be invested, or studios, and all that.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, along the
I
way,
love
we
it.
met other directors, and then we put them on the roster. And plus we have plenty more that are hip pocket that we still try to get work for if the creative is just right. So yeah.
Man, I love what you said about feeling a little insecure solo, but then, knowing that if you had a team, if you combined your talents, that you guys could make it. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that I worry is getting lost a little bit. Like, filmmaking is a team sport, 100%. Like, you're as good as your collaborators, and it's a lot like thinking of it as like a dinner party or something, like the guests have to be good, the food has to be right, like the music's got to be on point, like all the you really have to pick and choose your collaborators wisely, and because they set the tone and they elevate you, like, similar to playing in a band, I guess. And now we're in this, like, such an interesting time where it's like, there's influencers and, people that are almost like singled out for being like tours or solo artists. And I think so often the communal aspect of what we do is not focused on. And I I love that that was your focus, and I think that's what we've always tried to do
Totally.
too, is like we want to work with our friends, we want to collaborate. This isn't like a top down, like our vision, our way or the
Yeah.
highway. This is like, let's come together, let's have a good time, and let's make something really cool. And that's kind of always been our theory. And I guess it's lasted 19 years at this point. But I
Yeah.
find that, and I'm curious if you do too. Like I do find that, like, the more I sort of focus on like trying to develop younger directors or think about how to like make the experience not about me, but like very outward for other people, um, that that reinforces a lot more than when it's like trying to amplify my ego or something like that, like it's
Absolutely.
like going back to Winnebago Man, like that's about Jack Redning, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I wasn't even supposed to be in that movie, but that was me like wanting him to have his moment in the sun. And that, I don't know, just thinking about other people, I guess I'm trying to amplify
Yeah.
them as the thing that's always paid off, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, no, I appreciate that sentiment, and that is definitely something that we found. So much so we put generosity into our company values as far as this idea of looking outward and not holding any like trade secrets to ourselves, and not having it be about our ego, but really servicing the work and servicing people's passions and their unique abilities is a huge part of why we love to exist. And when I direct projects, I love it. I come alive. But at the same time, when I get to just produce a project and really support one of our other directors, I mean, I enjoy it equally as much. It just touches me in a different way that I
Yeah.
really appreciate. And I love that it's a community art form, both in the commercial side and other aspects. Like, I'm not that a tour director, and I used to be really insecure about that because I just didn't have some specific clear vision and I just could tell everybody what to do. Then I started realizing that that's okay. I can guide the ship, pull people that are really talented at what they do, and then figure out how to get in the same direction. And, but yeah, and so now when I'm on set or in prep, or it just comes alive and I love it. Even when it's all chaos, I'm like, I would not want to be doing anything else if I don't have
Man,
to. So,
and I love that you said that too. Like, you have some insecurity around feeling like you needed to be an auteur. And I think, when I taught film students, this was a long time ago now, but
mhm.
after grad school, I stayed on at UT for a couple of semesters while I was finishing up Winnebago Man. And I would have kids, 20 years old, come to me in the intro class and be like, if I don't have a movie get in Sundance by the time I'm 25, and I would just be like, why are you putting that pressure on yourself? Like, and I think because we are so in love with the stories of, like, Wes Anderson almost seeming to like pop out of this like very singular vision, or the Scorseses of the world. And but the thing that If you watch that Scorsese series that just came out, the thing that you realize is like he was very much part of a community of like Brian De Palma and Spielberg and George Lucas, and all those guys were all
Totally.
coming up at the same time in LA. They were going to parties at each other's houses. They were pushing each other forward. They were inspired by the same generation previous as filmmakers, and they
Yeah.
were like they were part of a team. And then all of those people have lifelong collaborators. Like Scorsese's been working with Thelma Schumacher since the 70s, and like
She's such a
uh,
genius.
such a genius. And I
Yeah.
know, I don't know a ton about Wes Anderson, but I know that he has like his go-to production designer, and like he's those it's about building your core team and sticking with that team and making like all growing together,
Yeah,
and
totally.
going back to my LA story, like I basically made Winnebago Man, got managers and agents. They sort of told me
Mm-hmm.
like the sky's the limit. And at that point I had fallen in love with like making a comedy that I could show in a theater of like 500 people, and they would all just laugh and then cry at the end and then laugh again and get up and do a 20-minute Q&A that was almost like a stand-up routine or something. And I just got like really addicted to uh, that experience. And so I was like, this is the best documentary that I can make, essentially. And I should try my hand at comedy narratives, having literally almost never written a script before. So it was such a big leap. And and I took it as like, I'm going to go do this by myself instead of take the team that had gotten me where Winnebago Man had gone along with me. And I
Feel you.
regret that to this day. And that is my number one piece of advice for people is like build your team and stick with them. Because I was basically like, I'm going to go make new movies and with new people. And the LA stereotypical story, it was like all yes, 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 until it came time to actually write the check and make it real. And then it never ended up happening.
Now, I want to go back to what you were talking about before because I'm really fascinated by that story that you were sharing. I've seen it in bigger scales and smaller scales. I would call mine a pretty minor scale, but I'll just tell this little anecdote of a story. And that is before I went to college, I made a short film. It didn't go to Sundance, it didn't go to South by or anything. And, but I thought it was pretty good. And then I kind of brought it to school, didn't go to film school, but some of the film professors saw it and they're like, oh man, this is some of the better stuff that I've seen, even out of our film students. And then it was helpful in like getting my business partners on board. But it was funny, even with that small little bit of thing, I grew addicted to the idea of being the person that could like create a world to then get people to be like, oh wow, I was transported somewhere and like to have that. And I did.
Mhm.
I took it internal and I figured that I had to feel like I had to prove myself again. And I like didn't work with others and I just kind of became more insular and I didn't become as fun to work with.
Mhm.
And so it was an
Mhm.
interesting transition to have to like go through that and come back out the other side that not my full identity is around this. It's okay that I'm not as an auteur. This is related to that previous story.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can work with others. And then finally I do it because of the delight and love of it. I love what I do. If I have the opportunity to do it, then I'm going to do it. If someone else ends up being a better fit for it, awesome. No worries. Moving on, kind of stuff. So it's like, so I
Yeah.
can create with much more freedom rather than this like holding on to, like I have to figure it out myself because I have to prove that I'm a creative individual. So I'm curious if there
Yeah.
is any overlap when you kind of push.
100%.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's this idea that I think people who are driven to like tell stories and be artists a lot of times are driven by a feeling of incompleteness, at least in my case. I was sort of like, I need to explain how cool I think things are in order to like be uh lovable or likable or whatever. And it's a classic sort of like type A, like you're trying to achieve in place of love, right? Like you feel that you are only worthy or valuable when you're excelling at something. And I think a lot of artists have that same gear. And just speaking for myself personally, that was a big driving factor for me, is like, I needed to feel like I was kind of the best, or I was making the most interesting work, or that I was my work, And once I had a big success and then wasn't able to like immediately follow it up, um, I took that really hard for a long time. And what I came to realize is like there's no amount of success that is going to make me feel like I'm good enough if I don't already feel like that. And it took me like doing that sort of personal emotional work, and I think just really maturing and kind of growing up a little bit. And I've since got married and had kids, and I landed in this place where like I think the artwork that I appreciate and the stuff that I'm drawn to making these days is just so much richer and fuller, because it's coming from like a place of wanting community, appreciating how hard it is to do this work, and also like that we get to do this work. And just it's like more of like a humble, grounded place that isn't an ego gratification. It's way deeper than that, And I think that conversely is like it makes the stories that I'm telling more interesting, because I am drawn to richer, more complicated stories, rather than just like the things that I think are going to be poppy or going to be a hit or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's all just a long way of saying, like, I think as you mature as an artist, your priorities change, which means your subject matter changes. And I think that's all how it should be, And so I think like if you have like a lot of people who have like an early success often really struggle with how to keep going, or like how to maybe not have another success on that same level and still feel like they're doing the right thing. So
Yeah,
um
absolutely. I
does that make sense? I
well,
feel like I kind of ran out of gas there at the end, but you
no,
you
no, it does
you
make
smell what I'm
sense.
stepping in, right?
Yeah, I am. Well, and I'm reminded of two different things. One, there's the humorous bit where Jim Carrey gave, I think, his Golden Globes, and he talks about like he's now a two-time winner, and and he goes, but that one day when I can become like a three-time winner, then my life will be complete. I will be enough. And and of course, Laura Rum's laughing, but it's like so true. Like great, he's experienced tons of success, but he is pointing out the fact that this in itself is
it's
not
never
going to be
enough.
enough. It's not going to be
If
fulfilling.
if your short film had gone into Sundance, you would have been psyched for a couple of days, and then you would have read about somebody's short film who won at Cannes or something, and then
Yeah,
you'd be like, "Why
totally.
didn't I go to Cannes?" Or then you would have been like, "Well, it's just a short film. I should have had a feature." And then if your
Exactly.
next feature you make, gets into a great festival, but it's not Sundance, then you're miserable again. And it's like, our brains are sort of evolutionarily wired to make us miserable, because that's the thing that like motivates us. And when you're young, you really need that motivation and that kind of misery to push against. But as you get older, you just get sort of tired, and you wonder what's in the fridge and you want to lie down, and you think about like, man, this is amazing that I get to do this work at all. And oh my
Yeah,
God, like we've been doing this for 20 years, and I have so many stories of making cool stuff with my friends. And that's really that should be
absolutely.
the thing, and not, what festival your film premieres at.
Yeah, what I've noticed in myself, and it seems to be a pretty true, there's kind of a sweet spot in as you're getting started and you're doing the thing because you just love it, and it's not necessarily about the success. Maybe some people are still motivated by it, but when I watch Winnebago Man, I see a genuine person on a genuine journey with another individual that they're genuinely trying to get to know and trying to wrestle with how to describe the story. And it was about that journey. It wasn't like, oh, I'm guessing you're not going, well, I'm making this because I want to make a Sundance movie in itself.
Right.
And then you get success, and then it is addicting. It's nice. And then all of a sudden it shifts from making it for the love of it to now making it to like prove oneself to get that success again, to
Yeah.
want to even to ourselves. And then you can get, if you can get past that hump, then you're back into creating it for like out of appreciation, out of gratitude, out of delight of the thing itself. And so it's like an interesting kind of parallel there. Hopefully, some people probably never get out of that cycle. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
that's
it's
my
like, do you
desire
know
for
that
people.
White Stripes song, that little room, where it's like when you're when you're just starting out, you're in a little room and you're working on something good, and then if it catches on, you're going to need a bigger room,
Oh
and then
yeah.
basically the song is like, and then when you're in your bigger room, you're always trying to get back to your smaller room, of like what it felt like when you were just like working on this little thing with your friends, because that was the reason you wanted to be in there in the first place, you know? And so I think
Yeah.
always like trying to tap back in to that initial spark, that initial love of, why we all got into this business is like super important. And that kind of
So
goes back to
important.
like what we were talking about at the beginning of like, you know, if this were only about making money for me and running a company and all that, like
Mhm.
I would go about it a lot differently and probably have a lot more money. But it's never been about that. It's always been about like needing to kind of be in love with the thing that I'm working on and the people I'm
Yeah,
working with. And when that just changes the equation,
it
and
does. Yeah, it
so
changes the definition of what success is, so therefore it changes the approach towards that success. And I
for
resonate
sure.
with it. I think about it too. And I used to beat myself up early in the company because I just couldn't figure out how to make it a money making machine. There
Mhm.
always had to be that element of like, well, I just want to enjoy what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with as well. So
Right.
I'm sure people know how to do both, but I had never fully
Yeah.
figured it out.
Yeah, amen. Me either.
Yeah.
And I so admire you that you've been able to do that in New York. I mean, talk about like high stakes, like you gotta, rents are super high and it's so hard to shoot things there. And you
Mhm.
gotta like really have budgets and resources in order to do what you're doing there. So kudos to you. You
Oftentimes,
definitely
yeah.
figured it out.
Well, we'll see. We're still figuring it out. It's a lifelong process, it seems, from when I keep on having more and more conversations with people. But yeah, well, we were based in Virginia primarily for a long time, and that's kind of
Mhm.
where we had done it. And then we expanded to New York, and my business partner's still in Virginia. And then actually, our post production supervisor and one of our head editors, he is in Austin, Texas, there. So shout out to Jake.
Sure.
Super
That's right.
great.
Shout
Shout
out
out to
Jake.
Austin and in Texas. And yeah, and then one of our EPs is in North Carolina. So we're kind of spread
Mhm.
throughout everywhere. We used to all be in Virginia, and then we all spread out. And
Isn't that amazing? That is the
yeah.
one, like, not that there's necessarily a positive thing about COVID, but like if there was one, it would be the idea that we sort of all learned like, oh, remote work is not only okay, but can sometimes like be great and be the thing that
Hmm.
like you need. And that idea was not really, I mean, I guess it was sort of around, but now with this technology, like I'm in Austin, you're in New York, like, it's wild how you can sort of work from anywhere these days.
Yeah, no, it really is. And also, I miss the in person aspect. So I'm glad to see you guys still have Edit Suite in person and studio. And
Yeah. I mean, and we definitely, we turnkey a lot of jobs. And so we do use this suite quite a bit, but we built it, we office out of a house. And when we moved in, this was just an unfinished 2-car garage. And so it took us a while to like save up and be able to like really design it the way that we wanted to design it. And of course, that all came to fruition like in at the end of 2019. So literally, like the edit suite was finished and ready to go, and then COVID hit, and everybody started working remotely. So so
That's
it kind of still has that like new edit suite smell and feel to it in a way, even though, you know, it's almost 5 years old now. So yeah, just in time to start working remotely, we got a super sweet edit suite.
that's funny. Um, all right. Well, I'm curious then, what is like the Cliff Notes version? So you went off on your own
Hmm.
for a second trying to do the narrative comedy thing. Things came back down. You regretted not continuing to work alongside the people that helped you on Winnebago Man. And
Yep.
then now you have this present day community ethos and philosophy. Like
Yeah.
what led into back into that? And
Well, so I was in LA, and I'd moved there, and I was married at the time, and my wife was a novelist, and she was from the East Coast, and she just didn't want to be in LA. She didn't like it, felt like she couldn't write there. She was still finishing up her PhD program here in Austin. They were asking her to come back and teach a creative writing program. So we started living apart, and then she really wanted to come back to Austin. And like I mentioned, like I had so many irons in the fire, but none of them were paying me any money yet in LA. And our company, The Bear, was really, you know, the thing that was paying me still. And I was flying back to Austin and doing shoots. And so it kind of just hit a point where it's like I couldn't justify being out there any longer. And so we moved back to Austin and then immediately got divorced. And I was kind of sideswiped by it. And, you know, it took me a long time to recover from that. And our company needed me back. We had a producer that had just left. And so I kind of dropped everything that I had been developing out in LA and let go of my managers and agents and just threw myself back into the company. And that was, man, 11 years ago now. And since then, I've made two other features and three TV shows and a bunch of short films and gotten remarried. I have two amazing kids. We've developed a roster of directors at the Bear. I mean, it kind of, you know, and really I'm burying the lead a little bit because I had this amazing experience that happened during that depressed sort of what was like a lowest point for me. And it's this weird sort of story. I've told it in different variations of like storytelling shows and stuff, but the short version of that is that in grad school, I started doing this thing where I would put ads in the classified section of the local weekly paper here that basically just said documentary subjects wanted, call this number and convince me to make a film about you. And
it's
at the
amazing.
time, yeah, at the time, it connected to a landline, and it was literally like an answering machine with like, you know, analog tape. And I would collect the messages, and sort of I studied like video art and stuff like that. And so I sort of thought like maybe this is the installation piece, right? I didn't know what it was. Or maybe just like funny stories to talk about at dinner parties or something. But I would do this and collect the messages, but I never went and actually filmed with anybody. And when I was out in LA and making the switch to narrative comedy, I actually made a short with Funny or Die that was a narrative version of the story. And it was making fun of the documentary director who was doing that. And in the Funny or Die version of this, he was a narcissist high school AV teacher who was basically like trying to make inspirational portraits about terrible people, but he was doing it so that he looked good. And um and it was really funny. Rory Scovel, who's one of my favorite comedians, played the high school teacher, and we shot the episode that we shot was with Matt Jones, who was Badger from Breaking Bad. And so it was really cool to get to work with those guys. And there was an idea that it would maybe go to series, but it didn't get enough views, and we just ended up doing the one pilot episode. Um, and then when I came back to Austin and I was, you know, depressed and all my projects had evaporated and I was divorced, and I started putting these ads in the paper again. And the first call I got was from this piano player named James. And there was just something about his message that made me want to go film with him. And I took this small crew over and we filmed this interview, and he just lit up. And his story was that he had been a lifelong career pianist, and he'd had a stroke and he was in pain often, and he had to teach himself how to replay or relearn how to play the piano. And the pain went away when he played, and it was this really beautiful sentiment. And we filmed him performing a few songs, and it was a couple hours, and it was this lovely experience, and he was a great person to meet. And as we were leaving, his partner pulled me aside and she was like, thank you, like, I don't know what this is, but I haven't heard him play like that in years, and this clearly meant a lot to him. I mean, and so I took the footage back to the office, and it basically just sat on the hard drive. Like, I didn't really know what it was, that had just happened. And a couple weeks later, she called me and she was like, "You're not going to believe this, but James died. And that was his last concert that you filmed. And could we show some of that at his memorial?" And so I jumped into action with an editor friend of mine, and we cut together this little portrait of him that they showed at his funeral. And it worked as it reminded me that, like, my true love, and if I do have a talent, it's for making documentary work and like connecting deeply and being able to like give people a stage, basically, like to sort of shine a spotlight onto people and to um, help them present their best selves, I guess. And and when that was shown to me in such a vivid way, it really made me double down on, like, okay, documentary is my unique contribution that I can make, and I should just stick with that and go that direction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that was right around that time you came back to Austin.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would have been like 2014, 2015, somewhere in there.
Okay, got it. And then how do you know, how did things grow? Like, do you have a personal relationship with all your roster directors and that kind of turned into, or, how did all
Yeah.
that?
Well, for a long time, and I wonder if you relate to this too, like, for a long time when we were building our company, it was so much about me and my business partner, Barrett. And it was like Ben and Barrett, like, we're the ones who are going to make the work. And so if he
Oh, yeah.
would direct, I would produce, and vice versa. And at a certain point, I started to kind of understand, like, oh, we're only ever going to make so many things if we don't start to work with other talented young directors. And I guess the idea of mentoring and, like, you know helping young filmmakers get an entree into the commercial world was always like really attractive to us. And I guess we started building our roster probably around like 2018 or so. And it started with friends, like one of our directors that's still on our roster to this day is a buddy of mine from college, and he's based in New York. His name is Priest Batten, and he is like just crazy talented, and is just this wild man. Like, he shot Chop and Steel, which is one of the feature docs that I made, and um, he is just one of those guys where it's like, yes, let's please collaborate with Priest on anything he wants to make. And so then from there, it kind of just spiraled, and then it was like or snowballed, I guess is a better way to say it. We, started attracting more, just more eyeballs. And then from that came other young directors who would send us their work, or, knowing that we were open and were kind of out looking around. And, Austin is such a indie filmmaking mecca for so many people, and there's so many talented young directors here, that it was there's so many just right in front of us. So we started to talk to those folks, and then we were noticing that we were getting more and more requests to have photographers join us on set, and have stills be part of the work. So then we started repping photographers, and those all grown pretty organically, but it's something that we've been chasing for 7 or 8 years now, is to develop a roster.
Yeah. Well, what advice do you have to up and coming photographers and directors as far as where they're at right now? And
It's do the Rick Rubin, make the thing that you love, that you have specific access to. Like, make it about you, make it as personal, as idiosyncratic as possible. And it's such a wild new world. Like, some of our young directors, like, they get DM'd from creative directors at agencies, based on like their Instagram feeds, and hired to do things for huge brands, directly. And I think, I'm sure you're seeing this too, Justin. Like, I'd be curious to hear your experience, but so many brands now want to make original content. Like, it's not. We still definitely get the, like, ad agencies that have the boards that have been approved, that come to us with the budget, and can you write a treatment and pitch on this work? And like, that's still the majority of the type of work that we do. And I would say, like, almost running parallels to that now is this idea of, like, brands wanting to have repeatable series, or come up with, like, content for their social media that isn't a commercial, that's more like a podcast or an authentic, like, can you do scenes in the restaurant or something that feels authentic and organic. And what I'm saying is, like, the kind of stuff that you could do as a young director coming up with just your iPhone or small crew is basically like what brands are looking for. And so I think, going back to your original question, what would my advice be to directors just starting out, is like, be super idiosyncratic, like, make something like that is specific to you and your experience, and that will be the thing that stands out.
I think it's great advice. And yeah, we've definitely been seeing that too. There's probably a success story of original content is Brooklyn Coffee. I don't know if you're familiar with
Mhm.
that.
I don't know that one, but there's one in New York right now that's at a record store. Has this one crossed your radar, where it's like,
I don't
it's
think I've
on
seen that one.
TikTok and Instagram Reels, and it's called Revolution Records. And literally,
Okay.
it's like the owner of the record store is, shooting 9 by 16 with his phone, and just literally, like, whip panning between customers having conversations. And they're often, like, funny, interesting characters talking about something unusual. And they're like 90 seconds long, but they're these, like, viral hits. And it's gotten all this attention, and, brings customers into the store. And that has been used as a reference multiple times. It's like, how can we do
Okay.
something like this?
Well,
Yeah.
I will check that out. And you check out Brooklyn Coffee Shop on Instagram
Okay.
or BK Coffee Shop. We'll put everything in the show notes here too. But they basically they're at least 59 episodes in, and it's
Wow.
the same setting each place. They basically have like two cameras set up. They have the two baristas in the background that are the same two every single time, and they play really kind of uppity, picky like things that they barely even sell coffee basically, because they're so specific on what they sell. And so people come
Uh-huh.
in and they basically give them a hard time about like how they're not ordering right, or they don't even serve that, and they kind of they kind of put them down and then they leave. Well, and it's the same thing every single time. That is it every single time. But the guest, the person that comes in, sorry, the guest, the customer, which is the guest, comes in, it's a different person. And so they partnered with other influencers to kind of come in and
Mm.
play that part. And so then they would then collaborate post on that, so they would both get followings through it. And now they have huge stars coming in. And So yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, they have.
That's fascinating. So is it to drive customers to the coffee shop, or is it like its own series now that's really more about the creators becoming influencers?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is an artisanal coffee shop, so it is about the coffee shop, but it is beyond that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my guess is they'll probably either already have a coffee brand, so probably selling it. But yeah, they have about three. It's only 349,000 followers, which is much more than FilmCry has. But yeah, it's done really well, and so yeah, they have a lot of celebrity
Cool.
people that come on now. So it's
Yeah.
also another success story, and it's really simple. It looks really good, but it
Hmm.
but you don't. It didn't have to be that complicated in order to make it look that good.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is like that's the stuff that people want to watch because that's authentic. That's like a natural extension of like I don't know the show, I don't know the creators, but I would assume they were working at a coffee shop and had access to that and came up with a funny idea. And then because they did something that was like particular to them and what they found interesting and using the thing that was right there in front of them, it became
Yeah,
successful. And that's, there's so much talk about like social media is kind of driving us all insane, which I tend to generally
I,
agree with.
yeah, same.
But
No disagreement there.
but I do also think that it's forcing us to really value what is authentic in this kind of converse way, right? Where like, we're so used to being advertised to in this very slick way. And I think social media is kind of the democratization has led to this desire for authenticity, which I think is really interesting. And I think that part of it is good. And I would prefer that kind of stuff to be getting more attention than say, you know, the real housewives of wherever. And so I think that is like a positive part of this democratization.
I think that is. I agree. Those are areas where I see light in the midst of some confusion of a world, and so
Oh, maybe
similarly,
that's our
like
maybe that's our pull quote right there. We did it, Justin. Light in
maybe
the midst of confusion. I love it. You did it.
that's good. Maybe we'll leave all this bit afterwards too of us, congratulating ourselves for finding it in the opening quote. Um, I am curious. I want to wrap things up here for you because I want to be respectful of your time. But I am curious, to kind of ending up here. What's piquing your curiosity these days? What gets you excited in life? Could be
Man,
involved in
well,
production, or could be involved in life.
yeah. Do you want it film related or not film related?
It
So
could
I feel
be
like those are.
anything related. You're like, you know what? I love basket weaving, and people made fun of it, but it's actually pretty great. Who knows?
I mean, I have two little kids, and so I'm very aware of the passage of time right now.
Hmm.
And they get older by the day, and I want them to stay 6 and 3 for as long as humanly possible because they're so cute and it's such a joy. And I am loving my daughter and I make little movies together that, we
Love
like
that.
come up with an idea and we shoot it on my phone and then we sit down at Premiere and edit it and put music and stuff. And we've done like 5 or 6 of those. And then I got this idea from my brother-in-law where he made like kind of compilation movies for his kids at every birthday, where he would basically take like the videos of that year that he shot on his phone and cut them together into this kind of coherent, funny flow. And I've done that, and I'm gonna start doing that for my son because his birthday's in mid-April here, and so I think it's a little bit of a hybrid answer because like that is what I do for a living is make movies and do that for people, but using that with my family to like be more connected with my kids is like
That.
my favorite thing in the world right now. And I didn't I didn't go into fatherhood thinking like I can't wait for them to make movies or whatever. But it's like it's this kind of like really sweet extension of our relationship that I guess is top of mind right now because we just went back and watched a bunch of my daughter's little movies this weekend and had like a
Love that.
little mini film festival on the couch, and it was a total joy.
I love that. I love that so much. That's a dream one day when I have kids. I think that would be an amazing thing to participate and do together.
Absolutely.
How about either on, yeah, how about on the business side or the personal project side for the public one day? What are things that you're passionate about right now in the future coming down the line?
Well, the business side, we continue to look for ways to kind of expand outwards with our collaborators, and we do a thing here where we screen some of our movies occasionally for our clients, and we bring them into the edit suite, and we have a dinner, and we make it like this really nice event. And we're starting to do that with more. Usually, that's been just kind of me and Barron's movies, but now we're starting to do that with more of our directors, and that's really fun to think about, like how to widen the scope a little bit and like
Yeah, I
bring
love that.
in our directors. And so we're going to do one here in a couple weeks with a new guy that we're working with who made a college basketball documentary. And it's, since we're in the midst of March Madness, it feels like the right time to invite
Yeah.
people over to watch this cool movie. So I'm excited about that. And that kind of also speaks to that, like, we're not saying like we want to come to your agency and show you a bunch of commercials so you hire us. It's more like come over and let's have a nice night together and watch some cool work. And so it's a very like subliminal roundabout way to just connect with our clients and friends, and make it more about like let's work together. It's implied that way rather than be like a sales script or something. Um,
I love that.
So
I love
that's
that.
kind of business wise what I'm excited about right now. And then personal projects wise, there is my white whale of a project right now is making a documentary about the Onion, the satirical newspaper, and I've been after that for like 7 years now. And
Want to watch this, please?
yes, I
So
want to
please make
make
it.
this so you watch it. I've been trying so hard, and we're so close, and we keep gaining access, losing access, gaining funding, losing funding, gaining EPs that are celebrities, and then losing. This is one of those
Oh
like Hollywood
man.
stories that's going to take 10 years and then be that type of story around the making of this movie. But we're close, and we're back to being really close again. So I'm very excited about that, and hoping that gets some traction here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we go, is there any life quote, motto, or word of wisdom that you've received that you like to pass on?
Hmm. Let me think about that. I mean, my go-to is the Rick Rubin quote of like, make the thing that you want to see in the world. And I guess that's also
It's good.
what's that? Is it Gandhi? I forget who said the thing about be the change you want to see in the world. Like it's kind of that same idea. It's like if you make the thing that you think is really cool, that you're on fire to want to watch, then you can trust that people will come along with you. So that's sort of like a bedrock one for me.
Gandhi is
And then
often attributed, yes, with that one.
is that right? Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's pretty pretentious for me to give a Gandhi quote.
Right.
Let me see if I
Right.
can
It's a good
end it
quote.
on a lighter note. And then I think, just as I get older, uh, I have a lot of friends right now who are like having kids for the first time, and I always tell them the thing that I was told that I so appreciated, because most everybody will tell you like, oh, it's so hard, and you it's going to change you fundamentally, and all those things are true. But the one thing that people don't talk about is how much more you laugh when you have kids, and it's like this joyful experience that
I love
you
that.
laugh more than you than you are prepared for when you're a parent. And so it's that part of it that I'm focused on. And I would say that that's like kind of in general good life advice. Like, do the thing that keeps you laughing and entertained, and then you can't go wrong.
Love that.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Ben. This has been a joy.
Man, thank you, Justin. Yeah, this is super fun. Thank you guys so much for asking me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.